The boardroom felt like a funeral before anyone spoke. It was 8:58 a.m. when I walked in, early on purpose. Jason was already there, standing at the far window like the skyline gave him power. Every person in that room, the CTO, the legal rep, the HR director, had built their careers on top of the system I designed in a studio apartment, back when I was running simulations on a second-hand MacBook that needed a cooling fan to survive. Now, none of them would meet my eyes. Jason cleared his throat as the final board member, Madison Blythe, adjusted her seat and folded her hands like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. "Everly," Jason began, "we've been evaluating our structure for scale, and in consultation with the board, we've decided to make a shift in leadership on the technical side." He didn't say, "We're letting you go." He said it like we were trading places on a team roster. Like the stakes were mild. Caleb Sinclair, the strategic growth advisor, who'd been orbiting our company like a corporate vulture for months, sat 2 chairs down, flipping a pen between his fingers. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. This was already done. I sat there, still and silent, watching the man I once called my husband fold me out of the company I helped build, with a script someone else had probably written. "This isn't personal," Jason added. "It's just about aligning for acquisition readiness." Madison nodded along like it made sense. Like acquisition readiness was worth gutting your original architect. The HR rep pushed a folder toward me. Inside, severance paperwork. An NDA. A clause to reassign non-exclusive rights to derivative technical architecture. They really thought I'd sign it. Jason gave me the same rehearsed smile I'd seen him use on investors. "We appreciate everything you've done, and we're offering a very generous exit package." I didn't open the folder. I didn't ask who was replacing me. I didn't look at Caleb. I didn't look at Jason. I didn't say a word. Instead, I calmly picked up the folder, slid it into my bag, stood and said, "I'll leave my badge and laptop with reception." Jason looked almost confused. "You're okay with this?" I smiled faintly. "It's your decision, right? So I hope you are." The silence that followed was thick with expectation. They were waiting for me to yell, cry, beg. I gave them nothing, because what they didn't know was that the moment Jason signed that document, the moment they officially terminated me without cause, they'd triggered a legal clause that would sever their access to the entire platform. They thought they were firing a founder, but they were cutting off the only artery that kept Helix alive. I walked out without looking back, and when the elevator doors closed behind me, I checked my watch. 10:26 a.m., the official timestamp of my termination. The moment my ownership rights reactivated. The moment the system they'd built everything on started ticking toward failure. There wasn't one big moment. No dramatic confrontation. No shocking discovery in the middle of the night. Just a slow, methodical decay. A million little things that didn't make sense, until they did. The first was the clause. About 8 months before the boardroom ambush, Jason casually brought up updating our founder agreement. Said our legal team had suggested we simplify things before the next investor round. I didn't think much of it. I was in the middle of debugging a massive architecture update for Helix Core, and Jason had a way of making contracts sound like minor paperwork. "It's just to clean up the IP language," he said, sliding a marked-up PDF across the kitchen island. "I'll take care of most of it. You just need to initial page 7. Page 7, where the new clause suggested that all existing and future derivative software created within the Helix Systems development environment shall be considered joint IP unless otherwise specified in a separate written agreement." He said it was standard. I said I'd have our legal consultant look at it first. His smile faltered. "Don't you trust me?" That was the first flicker. But I nodded anyway, and never signed. The second flicker came 2 months later. A late night in the office. I'd come back after dinner to push a code patch before deployment. Jason was supposed to be home, his calendar blocked for a private investor dinner. But his laptop was open in the war room. Still logged in. And the Slack messages were not about investors. They were from someone listed as EB. Elise Brooks, a contract designer we'd hired on a 1-month freelance deal the year before. Jason said she wasn't a good fit. She disappeared after 3 weeks. Apparently, she reappeared in his condo in Streeterville. I didn't screenshot the messages. I didn't confront him. I just read them. And then I walked out. I moved all my source code off the shared server that night. Then came the whisper from our lead investor, Meera Patel, during a quiet coffee catch-up 2 weeks later. "I don't know what's happening at Helix," she said carefully, stirring her tea. "But something feels off. Jason's making decisions without documentation. He's going around your desk. I asked her what she meant. He pitched a scalable new system to Sequoia without telling you. Said it was his initiative, a stripped-down version of Helix Core. But when they asked for benchmarks, he stalled. My stomach sank, because there was no stripped-down version. Not without me. That's when it all began to click. The reassignment clause. The phantom new platform. The late nights. The secrecy. Jason hadn't just changed. He'd planned this. He didn't fall out of love. He didn't drift. He recruited me, targeted me, loved me just long enough to leverage what I'd built, and then erase the evidence. That same night, I emailed Mira again. You're right. Something is off. Give me a little time. I'm building something better. She wrote back in 2 minutes. I'll back you when you're ready. And I'm not the only one. I stared at her words for a long time, then opened my password manager and started drawing the blueprints. Because Jason didn't just underestimate me. He forgot the most important rule in software design. You never write over the original. You build something stronger. Somewhere else. Before Jason. Before Helix. Before the betrayal and the headlines and the lawyers. There was just me. And the code. I was 25 when I started building Argus. A self-correcting predictive engine designed to monitor and optimize internal system performance in real time. It didn't have a logo or a landing page. Just a folder on my second-hand laptop and 3 years of notebooks filled with ideas scribbled during lunch breaks at my first job. I was a junior systems analyst at Klein & Farrow then, one of 10 women in a building full of overconfident, underperforming men who thought automation meant setting up a Slack bot. I learned fast, not because I wanted to impress them, but because I was tired of pretending to be impressed by them. I spent my evenings writing test scripts and building microservices no one asked for. I started tracking performance issues in our live environment and correcting them quietly without fanfare. The CTO at the time thought the system was finally settling. It wasn't. I was fixing it behind his back. Argus was born out of frustration, but it evolved from ambition. I wanted to build something that worked, that didn't need 20 engineers and a prayer to stay online. Something intuitive, elegant, a system that could learn from failure and repair itself before human hands even noticed something was wrong. By the time I turned 26, I had a functioning prototype, a neural backbone, a data digester, a decision-making loop. The first version was clunky, but it worked. I showed it to my best friend, Nia, one night over wine. Ever, she whispered, watching a dashboard adjust in real time. You didn't build a system. You built a brain. I didn't have a business plan, or funding, or even a name, just a dream, and a Google Drive folder with 6 layers of encryption. And then came Jason. We met at a Chicago tech showcase. He was slick, composed, exactly the kind of man I usually avoided, but he asked smart questions. He let me explain things. He listened, or at least pretended to. At the time, I thought he was different. He said he was looking for a co-founder for a new venture, something in diagnostics, maybe logistics. I want to build something lean and future-proof, he told me over coffee. But I need someone with an actual mind for systems. Someone like you. It felt like fate. It wasn't. Looking back now, I see it for what it was, calculated. Strategic. Jason didn't fall in love with me. He fell in love with the code, with the way I could make things work, and with the idea of standing in front of something powerful without ever having to hold the wrench. We incorporated Helix systems 6 months later. But I never merged Argus. Even then, I had a voice in the back of my mind whispering, keep something for yourself. So I did. I filed the first Argus patent under my maiden name, registered a holding LLC in Delaware, encrypted the raw engine in a private server only I had access to. Not because I didn't trust Jason, but because I trusted the world a little less. Helix Systems launched on a Tuesday. We were in a shared WeWork back then, crammed into a 2-room suite in River North with peeling paint, mismatched chairs, and an espresso machine that made more noise than coffee. But our pitch deck was clean. Jason had finessed every slide like it was art. I provided the numbers, the benchmarks, the product screenshots. He handled the polish. I handled the performance. It worked. We secured our first $750,000 in seed funding within 6 weeks. Mostly from mid-level Chicago angels, plus 2 institutional checks from out of state. Mira Patel was one of them. Jason called her too academic. I called her sharp enough to spot fake founders a mile away, which is probably why he stopped inviting her to pitch meetings without me. He said it was to streamline the narrative. I said nothing. Instead, I integrated just enough of Argus to make Helix Core viable, a modular version with limits, a stripped-down interface that still ran circles around anything on the market. I built the real version in parallel, the one Jason never saw. We started hiring within 3 months. A junior dev team, a project manager, one HR contractor named Leah who lasted exactly 2 weeks before Jason told me she had a poor cultural fit, which turned out to mean she asked questions Jason didn't know how to answer. By year 1, we'd landed 3 enterprise clients and a growing reputation for high-performance diagnostics. Helix was buzzing. And Jason? He was glowing, polished, charming, founder energy. He started being invited to panels, podcasts, dinners with VCs and former MIT dropouts who wore custom leather jackets and talked about disruption like it was a religion. The first time a reporter referred to him as the visionary behind Helix, I corrected it gently in our shared inbox. Jason never responded. The second time, I didn't bother. He had become the face of the company, and I had become something else entirely. Internal, quiet, unseen. I remember the moment it shifted for good. We were in a product planning meeting with our early investors, walking through a roadmap for a major update. Mira had flown in for it. She leaned forward and asked Jason, "How do you plan to handle load balancing with the new predictive loop?" He froze, because he had no idea what that meant. I jumped in, answered her. Mira nodded, satisfied. Jason barely looked at me for the rest of the day. 2 weeks later, I was removed from external meetings to simplify messaging. Our internal team doc no longer listed my title as CTO. It had been quietly edited to Head of Innovation. No discussion, no explanation, just changed. I pushed back once. Jason waved it off. "It's just optics," he said. That was his favorite excuse. Optics. Alignment. Market expectations. He never said what he really meant. I'm more valuable without you visible. And I let it happen, because I thought we were partners, because I still believed in what we were building. But belief only gets you so far when you're standing next to someone rewriting the future and quietly erasing your name from the blueprint. The first time I met Caleb Sinclair, he shook my hand like he already knew I wouldn't be around long. He was introduced as a growth strategy consultant, someone Jason had met at a startup leadership summit in San Francisco. A Yale MBA, polished LinkedIn headshot, tech-adjacent but not technical. One of those men who used the word scalability like it was a personality trait. "He's going to help us mature our org structure," Jason said. "More accountability, more cohesion. Fewer overlaps." Fewer overlaps. I knew what that meant. Within a month, Caleb had drafted a new reporting chart. All engineering leads, people who had reported directly to me since day 1, were now looping into Caleb via cross-functional coordination pods. They stopped asking me for decisions, stopped inviting me to sprint planning. At first, I corrected them. Then I realized they'd been told not to bother me. "We're trying to reduce context switching," Caleb told me in a meeting one day, all fake empathy and manicured smiles. "Let you focus on vision while I handle the execution." I stared at him for a long beat. "You can't handle execution when you don't understand the system." He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Jason didn't defend me. Instead, he scheduled a one-on-one alignment meeting the following week, where he slid across a revised title structure for Q3. Chief Innovation Liaison. I looked at the paper. "That's not a real role. It's outward-facing. You'll have more freedom," he said. "No more team bottlenecks or operational stress. We need you focused on long-term." It was a demotion dressed in compliments. And I was supposed to thank him for it. I didn't fight it, not openly. Fighting would have meant showing my hand. Instead, I nodded and said I'd adjust the roadmap. Then I started pulling back, quietly. I removed my admin privileges from our shared Trello boards, logged out of Helix's Slack channels, transferred personal files to encrypted backups, and replaced them with decoy folders. I rerouted access protocols on the core Argus loop. Jason never noticed. He was too busy prepping for our next funding round. Mira, who'd grown increasingly cautious, asked to meet alone. Over lunch in Fulton Market, she looked at me across a bowl of chilled soba noodles and said, "Tell me the truth. Are you still in this?" I wanted to say yes. But instead I said, "Not for much longer." She nodded. "When you're ready, I'm with you. And just so you know," she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice, "2 of our biggest co-investors are asking the same question." I already knew who. Vincent Tao from East Loop Capital and Daniela Vega, an early-stage powerhouse who'd backed Jason only because I had vouched for him. I filed that away. For later. At home, the silence between Jason and me had become routine. He traveled more. Stayed late more. Elise's name never came up again, but the trust had long since expired. And the marriage? It felt like an app running in the background, slowly draining battery, serving no purpose. Still I stayed. Not for him. For the exit. Because Jason thought the hierarchy had shifted. He thought I was shrinking. What he didn't realize was, I was preparing to leave everything he thought he controlled, and take the future with me. It was an accident. Jason left his laptop open. That never happened. He was obsessive about locking his screen. Paranoid, really. But that morning, he was running late for a founder breakfast downtown, and in his rush to make the 8:30 reservation, he forgot. I almost walked past it. Almost. But when I saw the tab still open, a document previewed in Google Drive, my feet stopped moving. The header read, Apex Integration Group, Internal Architecture Plan version 3.1. I clicked. It was a stripped-down version of Helix Core. No mention of Argus. No diagnostics loop. Just a hollow shell using my framework, restyled, repackaged, and labeled with Jason Keen as sole creator. The architecture mirrored mine line for line in some places. Identical sequencing. My syntax. My logic trees. Even a function I'd built 5 years ago for a client pilot we never released. The code wasn't his. It was mine. At the bottom of the doc was a line that made my chest tighten. Projected rollout. Q1 2025, post-Everly transition. There it was. Proof. This wasn't spontaneous. Jason had been planning my removal for over a year. I started searching his files. The linked accounts. The secondary folders. A new email address, Keen at Apex Integration. IO. A Slack workspace I'd never seen before. And a Delaware LLC filing timestamped March 1st, just 2 days before he forced me out. Founder, Jason Keen. CTO, Caleb Sinclair. Product lead, Elise Brooks. Elise. The woman who'd vanished from our contractor roster over a year ago. Now she was part of the new venture. I should have felt rage. But all I felt was stillness. This was confirmation. He hadn't just removed me. He was trying to replace me. Replicate my work. Retain my reputation. Repackage everything under a new brand, Apex Integration Group. With shiny new faces and zero mention of where the tech came from. But Jason forgot something critical. He never owned the foundation. Argus was still mine. Every loop, every license, every derivative. The stripped-down version? He could build it, but it wouldn't run, because the adaptive logic was only executable through keys embedded in my biometric signature. He didn't even know those keys existed. I closed the laptop. Then I opened mine. That same night, I initiated 2 critical actions. Cyrene Systems was officially incorporated in Nevada, with Meera Patel listed as lead investor and founding board advisor. I uploaded Naira's core to a new deployment environment, firewalled from Helix entirely. Patent filing, in progress. Legal watermark, embedded. And then I made one more move. I called Daniela Vega. She picked up on the second ring. Jason doesn't own the tech, I told her. But I do. And I'm launching something better. There was a pause. Then Daniela said, Do you want a soft commitment now or a term sheet next week? My fingers curled around the phone. Both. Cyrene wasn't just a company. It was a correction. A clean start. A new name. A vision sharpened by betrayal. Within 48 hours of filing the incorporation paperwork, I had secured 2 term sheets. Myra's bridge round at $1.5 million and Daniela Vega's offer to lead our Series A. But that was only part of the plan. The rest was about people. I started with Malik Carter, a systems engineer I'd mentored years ago who'd left Helix when Caleb restructured the back-end team. I figured something was going down, he said when I called him. You were too quiet. And Jason's too loud when he thinks he's winning. I sent him a sandbox version of Naira's engine. His reply came in less than 30 minutes. It's perfect. When do we start? Then came Talia Kim, our former UX lead, the one Jason said didn't have enough polish for enterprise. She'd rebuilt our onboarding dashboard from the ground up in 2 weeks. Clients loved it. Jason never gave her credit. When I told her I was starting something new, she didn't even ask for details. I'm in, she said. Just tell me when and where. I gave her full creative control over our visual design, something she never had at Helix. By week's end, I had a 5-person skeleton crew. All brilliant. All overlooked. All loyal. And Jason? He was still smiling for interviews. He did a podcast that week, a 20-minute segment on founders and burnout. He used words like pivot and resilience. He referenced our early technical wins without ever saying my name. He still didn't know I'd filed for divorce. The papers were served by a process server named Denise, a woman I hired specifically because she didn't flinch in tense rooms. She delivered them to Jason's office during a partner meeting with East Loop Capital. I didn't ask for alimony, just a full separation of shared business assets, all outlined neatly with legal documentation of the patents, filings, and timestamps tied to Argus and Naira. Jason texted me 5 minutes later. "You're really doing this?" I didn't reply, because while he was scrambling to salvage what he thought was salvageable, I was building something unstoppable. Cyrene's rollout plan came together fast. Pilot program, 6 clients for former Helix partners, 2 new. Platform, cloud-native, zero legacy dependencies. Licensing model, tiered modular, outcome-based pricing. Launch date, May 1st. Everything was on track. We even leased a small space in the West Loop. Exposed brick, natural light, a reclaimed wood table in the conference room that Talia found on Facebook Marketplace. It wasn't flashy. It was ours. By mid-April, Mira texted me a heads up. "Heads up, Vincent Tao is out. Sold his Helix shares. Quietly, but it's real." Vincent was one of Helix's original seed investors. Jason courted him for months. He called him the future of strategic capital. Now he was gone. Cyrene hadn't even launched, and Helix was already starting to bleed. But I didn't cheer, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration, about showing the industry what leadership looked like when it wasn't built on lies, and about showing myself that the woman who wrote Argus in a studio apartment with duct-taped headphones was still here, more focused, more dangerous, and just getting started. The board meeting started at 10 a.m. Sharp. I walked in exactly on time. Not early, not anxious, just prepared. Jason sat at the head of the glass table, flanked by Caleb Sinclair, the Helix board liaison, HR, and a corporate attorney I didn't recognize. "Thanks for coming," Jason said, like he was inviting me to brunch. The HR director opened a Navy folder and began reading from a pre-written script. "Today's meeting serves as formal notification of your separation from Helix Systems, effective immediately." Jason jumped in. "It's a strategic alignment thing, Ev. Realignment for scale. No hard feelings." I said nothing. The corporate attorney slid the documents across the table. Severance terms, NDA, and a clause requesting voluntary transfer of non-exclusive access rights to foundational IP. I looked at the folder. I didn't open it. "Your badge access has been disabled," HR added. "Your belongings will be packed and delivered. There's a return envelope in your exit packet for your laptop." Jason folded his hands. "This is just business. I hope we can be professional about this." I nodded once, slowly. "Of course." I picked up the folder, placed it in my leather bag, and stood. Jason blinked. "You're okay with this?" I met his gaze with the same steady calm I'd used to debug my first crisis system in real time. "You're the one making the decision," I said. "You should be okay with it." And then I walked out. No protest. No threats. No monologue. Just silence. The kind that lets men like Jason believe they've won, while their empires quietly begin to crack. By 12:01 p.m., exactly 2 hours later, my attorney Elaine Mendoza issued the first certified letter to Helix Legal. Subject: termination of access rights and notification of IP severance activation. Per the founder agreement and marital prenup, Jason's decision to terminate me without cause triggered automatic revocation of all licensed access to Argus, Helix Core, and any systems derived from them. The countdown had begun. They had 30 days. And no backups. At 1:34 p.m., Elaine sent a second notice to the board chair. A cease and desist against any future use or replication of Argus system logic, including derivative works, including Apex Integration Group. And at 2:16 p.m., Mira texted. He walked right into it. "You okay?" I wrote back. "More than okay. It's done." But that wasn't entirely true, because at 3:40 p.m., Mira forwarded me another message, this one from a contact at PulseGrid, a Fortune 500 diagnostics partner and one of Helix's most valuable enterprise clients. They'd reached out to her discreetly. Jason had promised them a Helix Core 2.0 release, one that was now clearly vaporware. Mira didn't pitch Cyrene, but she mentioned offhandedly that Everly's building something better. Quietly. That's all it took. Pulse Grid's VP of Strategy messaged Mira, asking if I was taking meetings. We're exploring new platforms. We want something stable, more intuitive, something we can actually trust. I smiled. I didn't respond right away, because Cyrene hadn't even launched. And already, it was attracting the clients Jason was trying to keep. It started with a system flag from Orion Medical Logistics, a Helix client since year one. They reported a minor predictive delay in their shipment routing dashboard. Nothing mission critical. But Helix Core wasn't supposed to lag. Ever. By the end of the day, 3 more clients flagged similar issues. One internal dev ticket read: AI loop isn't syncing with real-time data. Seems stuck in regression. Jason's response: just reboot it. But rebooting wouldn't help, because the diagnostic engine wasn't frozen. It was closing. 1 week after my formal termination, I had 5 former Helix employees working with me full-time at Cyrene. I hadn't recruited them. They'd come to me. Malik Carter brought 2 engineers with him, Ria Mehta, our best data pipeline dev, and Noah Delgado, who used to lead QA automation before Caleb streamlined the testing protocols into chaos. They showed up at Cyrene's co-working suite with coffee, laptops, and a simple statement: "We were loyal to you, Everly. Not them." Talia Kim was already building the new client portal, a clean, intuitive UX that PulseGrid would be the first to test. We didn't wait for PulseGrid to formally request a pitch. We anticipated it. Talia, Malik, and I designed a custom sandbox that mirrored their use case: supply chain risk forecasting with AI-integrated alert resolution. Our staging environment was polished within 4 days. We called it Pulse Lite. "You think they'll go for it?" Talia asked. I smiled. "They won't just go for it. They'll feel like we built it just for them." While we were building, Helix was crumbling. Jason didn't notice at first, but the engineers did. The help desk queue was full of tickets no one could resolve. Caleb began avoiding technical stand-ups altogether. When clients asked questions, he replied with phrases like "in progress," "reassessing the stack," and "working on a bridge solution." None of it meant anything. He didn't understand the system. He never had. And without me, he was trying to fly a plane with a flashlight and a sticky note. By midweek, PulseGrid's internal team emailed Helix support directly. Their dashboards were glitching. Automation scripts weren't executing. The dev team tried to manually override the diagnostics engine. It triggered a fail-safe loop and locked them out of their own custom rule sets. Jason called Caleb into a closed-door meeting that lasted 90 minutes. When they came out, Maya, Jason's executive assistant, resigned on the spot. She didn't say anything publicly, but an hour later, she emailed me her resume. I hired her the next morning. At Cyrene, we launched an internal memo called Phase Echo, a structured transition program for Helix clients seeking migration to Naira. No public announcements. No press. Just preparation. Mira forwarded me a note from Daniela Vega, who had been watching quietly. "Jason's cooked. Vincent pulled out last night. I'm not far behind." Jason didn't see it yet. He was too busy holding all-hands meetings where he used phrases like, "we'll come out stronger," and "this is just a blip." But on the back end, Helix Core was bleeding out. At 3:12 p.m. that Thursday, PulseGrid's VP of Strategy sent a message to the alias we created just for them. "We're interested. Send us a time to meet." Talia printed it out and stuck it on the glass wall behind her desk. "Think he knows yet?" she asked, not looking up. I did. Jason knew something was wrong, but he still thought it was fixable. He didn't realize that the woman he tried to erase had already rebuilt everything. Without him, Malik Carter showed up on a Thursday. No warning. Just a knock on the glass door of our West Loop co-working space. A coffee in one hand and his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He hadn't changed, same blunt energy, same quiet fire behind the eyes. But this version of Malik? He looked. Done. I opened the door. "You're early." He held up the coffee. "I figured I owed you this. For not listening sooner." I stepped aside. "Come in." Malik had been one of my first hires at Helix. A junior dev I pulled out of a dead-end subcontractor job writing middleware for freight logistics. He didn't come from a fancy pedigree. Didn't have startup polish. But the man could read code like it was poetry. We built the first stable version of Argus side by side. 2 a.m. Debugging sprints. Sticky notes on white boards. Inside jokes about Jason's inability to understand recursive logic. That was before. Now he stood in my workspace, scanning the clean lines and open desks of Cyrene, and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "It's quiet in here," he said. "In a good way." I leaned against the table. "Tell me what's going on." He sat, opened his laptop bag, and pulled out a folder labeled Exit Materials. Inside, resignation papers, NDA paperwork, a copy of Helix's latest org chart with his name scratched off in pen. "After you left, everything changed," he said. Caleb started rewriting deployment schedules with no idea how the layers worked. Jason let him. People are scared to say anything. I stayed silent. Let him speak. They brought in a new dev lead from an outsourcing firm. Doesn't know the architecture. I tried to warn Caleb about how the predictive sync loop works. He told me to trust the new direction. He shook his head. Code started breaking. No documentation. No backups. They rolled out a patch last week that crashed one of Orion's batch processes. Caleb blamed QA. QA had already been fired. I sighed. I warned them. Malik looked at me. They didn't care. You were a threat, not an asset. That whole company was held together by duct tape and you. He hesitated, then said it. I want in. I raised an eyebrow. You sure? I'm done pretending Helix is salvageable. And I'm tired of building brilliant things for people who don't know how they work. I handed him a badge from the small stack in my drawer, pre-printed for the people I hoped would find their way back. He took it. Full access, he asked. With your brain, I said. There's no other kind. He grinned. I brought someone else with me. Ria Mehta stepped into the room. She had been one of our best data engineers, sharp, methodical, quiet. The kind of woman who built systems that never broke, and got overlooked because she didn't pitch them with buzzwords. We've been talking, she said, about what Helix could have been, about what it should have been. Malik nodded. You gave us that once. We'd like to build it again. I opened my laptop and slid it toward them. The Naira core, fully stabilized, already architected for Pulse Grid's use case. Then let's get to work, I said. We started reviewing code right then. While Jason was across town in a private strategy meeting with investors, trying to convince them everything was under control, I was rebuilding the future with the very people he underestimated. Maya James had been with Helix since the first year, back when we were still printing our own name badges and fighting over desk space in a converted warehouse. She started as Jason's executive assistant, but she was more than that. She was a gatekeeper, a fixer, a quiet operator who knew exactly how to smooth over chaos before anyone else saw it. She was also the only one who ever brought me coffee without asking how I took it. So when she texted me out of nowhere with 4 words, "Are you in the office?" I knew something was coming. I replied, "Yes. Come." She walked in 20 minutes later, heels off, carrying a sleek black tote and the tension of someone who'd just burned a bridge and didn't regret it. I met her at the door. "You're early," I said. Her smile was tight. "He's unraveling." I stepped aside. "Tell me everything." She sat across from me in the Cyrene conference room, pulled a crumpled envelope from her bag, and dropped it on the table. Caleb called an emergency investor sync this morning. Jason tried to explain the Pulse Grid situation, said it was a minor dashboard issue. Daniela Vega interrupted him mid-slide and said, "Your minor issue just cost you a $9.3 million contract." I whistled low. "So Pulse Grid already told them?" "Worse," she said. "They told everyone." Their CTO posted a veiled announcement on LinkedIn about evolving beyond platforms built on outdated systems. The investor thread is already eating it alive. She leaned forward, eyes burning now. "They're blaming you." I sat back. "Of course they are. They're saying you built it to collapse, that you left a kill switch, that this is sabotage. And what do you believe?" Maya met my gaze. "I believe I've watched you hold that place together for 5 years with nothing but code and caffeine while Jason took the credit." She paused. "And I believe it's time someone did something about it." I tilted my head. "So why now?" She exhaled. "I stayed because I thought maybe I could still fix it from the inside, that I could protect what we built. But today, Caleb crashed an internal review with Sequoia. He couldn't answer a single technical question. He kept asking the engineering director to reframe the value prop. And Jason?" Maya's voice lowered. Jason just sat there, smiled, like if he kept smiling long enough, people would forget the system doesn't work anymore. She looked down at the tote bag. "I want in, Everly. Not just to walk away, but to build something better." I considered her. Maya had always played her cards close. But her loyalty, once earned, was surgical. Deadly in the right hands. You understand this is war, right? I said. I'm not here for peace, she replied. I'm here for restoration. I nodded, then handed her a stack of Cyrene onboarding forms. She tucked them into her tote like a resignation letter she couldn't wait to submit. I already scheduled a courier for my Helix exit documents, she said as she stood. And Jason should receive his resignation confirmation from HR by close of business. She reached the door, then turned. Oh, and Everly? Yeah. He's trying to schedule a call with PulseGrid next week. Thinks he can get them back with a service discount. I smirked. He's not getting them back. I didn't think so, she said. I told their strategy team to block his number. Cyrene wasn't a startup anymore. It was a force. By the first week of May, we'd locked in 3 signed clients, 9 trial agreements, and 2 active pilots, the biggest of which was PulseGrid. The PulseGrid pitch went nothing like the ones Jason used to run. No overdesigned slides. No bloated buzzwords. No branded water bottles. Just a live demo in our new workspace, 1 whiteboard, and a dashboard running PulseLight, our custom Naira implementation, in real time with their actual forecast data. I watched their CTO, Karen Beck, lean forward as the system flagged a temperature drop in their supply chain. The dashboard offered 2 reroute options with cost delta predictions built into each one. Karen looked up. How is it already learning from our internal thresholds? Malik grinned. It's not learning. It's adapting. Your data trained the loop before you walked in. Karen turned to me. This system doesn't just support our operation. It anticipates it. I said nothing, because Naira didn't need me to speak for her anymore. She could speak for herself. Karen signed the next day, a 2-year exclusive contract with performance bonuses if our predictive accuracy stayed above 93%. We hit 96% by week 2. That afternoon, I gathered the team, Malik, Ria, Talia, Maya, and the 3 new engineers we'd brought on through their networks, and we walked together to a small restaurant 2 blocks away. It wasn't a launch party. It was a reclamation dinner. Talia raised a glass first. To systems that run clean, she said, and leaders who know how to write them. I didn't make a toast. I just watched them, the people who had stayed, returned, or found me through the ashes of Helix, and felt something I hadn't in years. Whole. Later that night, I sat at my desk, feet up, tea in hand, and opened my inbox. Mira had forwarded me a screenshot. Jason's calendar had leaked. A blocked appointment marked. Emergency licensing negotiation, Cyrene/Naira, board ordered. The sender? Helix's new outside counsel. Beneath it, Mira wrote simply, He's finally been told the truth. You're the only way out. I didn't reply, but I did forward the message to Elaine, my attorney. She responded within minutes. Want to take the meeting? I typed back. Only if Jason's not in the room. Elaine replied with a thumbs up. And then one more message. He wanted to own the system. Now he has to rent it, from you. I closed my laptop and looked out the window. Cyrene's office overlooked the skyline Helix used to pretend it controlled. But I wasn't chasing skyline views anymore. I was building ground-up power. Quietly. Permanently. Everything Jason thought he stole, every headline, every patent, every line of code, was dust in my rear view. And what I'd built now couldn't be taken, because it wasn't just my software. It was my name, my team, my future. He showed up without an appointment. No boardroom, no legal counsel. Just Jason, standing in the lobby of Cyrene's downtown office like the world hadn't completely changed since the last time he saw me. Maya caught sight of him first. He's here, she said, arms crossed. Want me to call security? I glanced up from my laptop. No, let him wait. I let him sit there for 20 minutes. He paced, checked his phone, looked around at the space we built without him, clean, warm, focused. There were no shiny trophies, no blown-up magazine features, just real work. I finally stepped out into the lobby. Jason stood, pulling at the sleeves of his jacket. He looked tired, wrinkled, like someone who hadn't been sleeping well since he realized he didn't own the ground beneath his feet anymore. Everly. I tilted my head. Jason. Do you have a minute? I gave Maya a nod. She returned to her desk slowly. Jason followed me into a small private conference room, the one we used for early-stage clients. He sat. I didn't. I wanted to talk. Not through lawyers. Not through licensing terms. Just us. There is no us, Jason. He flinched but kept going. I messed up. I know that. I let other people influence me. I underestimated you. I thought you'd come back. To what? The lie you built over my work? He shook his head. No, I cut him off. You married me to access the code. You pitched it without my name. You tried to replace me, erase me, rebuild me through people who never could have done what I did. And when that failed, you circled back, because you realized I'm the only one who ever built anything that lasted. He was silent for a long moment. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I believed him. But I didn't care. I miss you, he added. I smiled. Not cruelly. Just knowingly. No. You miss control. You miss having me around to solve the problems you caused. His shoulders slumped. Then maybe I just miss knowing what the hell I'm doing. There it was. The truth. I nodded once. That's fair. But your clarity doesn't buy you access. Not to me. Not to my work. Not to this company. He stood slowly, like he didn't quite know what to do with his hands. Is there anything I can do? I considered him for a beat. Sign the licensing contract. Pay the full rate. Treat it like a privilege, not a favor. He looked like he wanted to protest, maybe negotiate, but didn't. Finally, he nodded and turned to leave. At the door, he hesitated. You really don't want anything from me? I smiled. I want you to understand that I never needed anything from you to begin with. He left without another word. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Maya popped her head in. He gone. Gone, I said. She handed me a single sheet of paper. A printed contract with Helix Systems listed as the licensee. Elaine said he signed. I scanned it, initialed the final page, and handed it back. Send it, and tell her to invoice monthly. Maya smirked. I'll add the late fee clause. The story broke 2 days after Jason signed the licensing contract. It wasn't leaked. No press release. Just a quiet change in Helix's investor portal, publicly listing a new line item. Licensing agreement, Cyrene Systems Incorporated. Q2 FY25. Someone noticed. Then someone else screen capped it. By noon, TechSpear had published an article titled, Helix now running on licensed tech from ex-co-founder's new firm. The subtitle was even sharper. Sources say CEO Jason Keene now rents the very system he once claimed to build. Jason tried to get ahead of the narrative. A statement went out that afternoon from Helix PR. Sterile, bloated, transparent. We're proud to partner with external innovators as we transition Helix Systems into its next phase of growth. No one bought it. The comments were brutal. Daniela Vega officially pulled out of her board seat the next morning. Vincent Tao quietly sold his remaining stake. Even Mira, who'd stayed silent until now, published a carefully worded post on LinkedIn. There's a lesson in knowing when to lead, and when to step aside and let the true architect take her seat. She didn't tag me. She didn't need to. The industry was already talking. Cyrene was now seen not just as a competitor, but as a correction. Clients called us the clean version. Investors called us the real bet. And Jason? He disappeared. No podcasts. No panels. No interviews. For once, his silence felt like the only authentic thing he'd done. A week later, our office got a package. No return address. Inside, a Helix Systems plaque, the one from our very first funding announcement. The metal nameplate had been scratched. Jason's name was barely visible under the deep gouge in the surface. Maya found it first. She carried it into my office, held it up, and said, "Want to toss it?" I looked at it for a long moment, then shook my head. Mounted in the bathroom. Upside down. She grinned. On it. That Friday, Cyrene hosted a small, closed-door strategy summit with our pilot clients and key advisors. No press. No branding. Just a clean space, a clear roadmap, and a working system that didn't need to pretend to be more than it was. Afterward, I stood on the balcony of our new office, corner suite, top floor, overlooking the city. Jason once told me that success was about visibility. He wanted photos, spotlights, the illusion of power. I wanted something else. Control, clarity, peace. And now I had all three. A notification buzzed on my phone. Elaine, wire received. First licensing payment cleared. Full rate. The payment was 6 figures. Just the beginning. Jason's name wasn't on it. Just Helix Systems Incorporated. Listed now as a licensee. Not a partner. Not a competitor. Just another tenant in the house I built. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Because some endings don't need applause. Just a quiet moment. To recognize that justice doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes, it just looks like freedom. It was quiet in the Cyrene office that morning. Most of the team worked remotely on Fridays, and the sun poured through the east-facing windows, warm and uninterrupted. I sat alone at the long table in our workshop space, running final checks on our rollout for a smaller education tech client. The kind of client Helix never had time for. I liked these days. The quiet ones. The ones without war rooms or urgent headlines or betrayal ticking beneath the surface. Just code. People. Purpose. That's when Isla Santiago walked in. She was our newest intern, a second-year CS student from UIC, sharp as hell and still unsure whether she belonged in rooms like this. She hovered near the doorway. Sorry to interrupt. I looked up. You're not interrupting. Come in. She sat across from me, hesitating before pulling out a notepad filled with diagrams and annotated flowcharts. I've been studying Naira's layered diagnostics model, she said. And I think I'm missing something in the adaptation thresholds. She flipped to a page. I recognized it instantly. One of the decision trees I'd written years ago, back when Argus was still just a collection of midnight ideas and caffeine-fueled dreams. You're not missing anything, I said. You're standing too close. Zoom out. She blinked, then sat back, eyes scanning the diagram from a higher level. Oh! Her whole face lit up. I smiled, because I remembered that moment, the click. I watched her scribble notes, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about Jason. Or Helix. Or what it cost to win. I was thinking about how far I'd come, and how close Isla was to starting her own journey. She looked up at me suddenly. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you sell Cyrene? I tilted my head. You heard that rumor? She shrugged. A friend of mine interns at Rydell Capital. Said you turned down 2 acquisition offers. One from someone you used to work with. Jason. Of course. I took a sip of my coffee. Because I built this for the long game. Not the exit. She nodded slowly, but I could see more questions spinning behind her eyes. So I gave her the part no one tells you. I spent years building something that someone else tried to take credit for. I let it happen for a while. Because I believed in what we were building. And in him. But the truth is, I built Helix with borrowed confidence. I paused, watching her eyes widen slightly. I didn't need to, I added. But I didn't know that yet. She stayed quiet, absorbing every word. So now, I continued, I build like I know who I am. And I don't give people keys to doors they didn't help design. Isla sat back in her chair, notebook closed, eyes focused. You ever think about what you'd do if he hadn't betrayed you? She asked. I considered it. Then I shook my head. If he hadn't betrayed me, I said, I might have stayed hidden. Might have kept letting him lead from the front while I held everything together from behind the curtain. I stood gathering my things. But now, my name's on the door. My signature's on the contract. And my systems run the industry. She smiled. Good answer. Learn from it, I said gently. So you never have to survive what I did just to find out what you're capable of. Jason was served at 9:17 a.m. On a Tuesday. Elaine had it arranged through a private courier, discreet, efficient, and just formal enough to land with weight. She didn't send it to his office or at a meeting, but directly to his penthouse, where he wouldn't be surrounded by handlers or spin. There was no confusion in the documents. No ambiguity. Just 3 clean sentences. This is notice of dissolution. The marriage is over. The business is already gone. I didn't hear from him until noon. The text came from the same number I hadn't blocked, though I probably should have. Seriously? Now? I didn't reply. At 2:14 p.m. He sent another. 5 minutes. Somewhere neutral. I said yes. I picked the coffee shop. A small, quiet place tucked between a bookstore and an old tailor on the north end of West Loop. The kind of place we used to go to before meetings, before Helix, before the lies started piling up. I arrived first and chose the booth in the back. Jason came in late. No suit. No swagger. Just him in jeans and a navy hoodie, hair slightly disheveled, looking like he'd aged 5 years since the last time we spoke. He slid into the seat across from me. I let the silence settle. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Why? He blinked. Why what? Why did you use me? Jason exhaled and looked down at his coffee. I didn't mean to, he said finally. At first, it wasn't like that. At first? I repeated. When we met, I saw what you'd built. Argus. The potential. And yeah, I thought if I could help scale it, package it, we'd both win. He paused. His voice dropped. But somewhere along the way, I realized you didn't need me." He said it like a confession. "You were better at the code, smarter about the system. People listened to you more when they realized how much you understood. And he swallowed, I got scared. I didn't move. I thought if I didn't carve out space for myself, if I didn't control it, I'd be left behind. So your solution," I said slowly, "was to take what I built and rewrite me out of it?" His eyes met mine. I didn't think it would go that far. "But it did," I said. "You kept going." He didn't argue. "You married me," I said, voice steady, "knowing you were building something on me, not with me. And for a while I believed in you. I believed in us." I leaned forward slightly. "I really loved you, Jason. I wasn't playing a game. I wasn't trying to win. I wanted to build something that lasted forever. With you. Not in spite of you." His eyes were glassy now. He didn't speak. "You could have had everything," I continued. "The business. The marriage. The success. You could have had me at your side, not in your shadow." I shook my head. "But you weren't the man you told me you were." Jason looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe beg. Maybe explain. But I didn't let him. I deserved a partner. Someone who saw me clearly. Who respected what I brought to the table, not someone who was threatened by it. I sat back, letting it land. He looked down at his hands. I didn't know how to be that man. "I know," I said softly. "And that's why this ends here." He looked up, pained. "Do you hate me?" I considered the question. "No," I said truthfully. "I don't hate you." He looked relieved for a second. "But I don't need you. Not as a partner. Not as a co-founder. Not as a husband." He winced but said nothing. "Your legacy," I added, "won't be what you built. It'll be what you tried to steal. And what you lost." He nodded slowly. I deserved that. I stood, slid my empty mug toward the center of the table, and gathered my coat. "You deserved better too," I said as I stood. "But you'll have to live with the man you chose to be." Jason didn't follow me out. He just sat there, eyes on his coffee like it could still warm something that had long since gone cold. I walked back into the light of day and didn't look back. The call came in at 8:47 a.m. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said it needed to be done. I picked up. "Hello." Jason's voice, cold and measured, filled the line. "I just want you to know we're reviewing all the licensing language. We think there's a strong case that Naira is a derivative of Helix Core, and therefore falls under our original IP framework." I didn't respond. He kept going. "If you're smart, you'll settle before this gets ugly. Our attorneys are ready to move." I stayed silent, then said simply, "You really think you still have ground to stand on?" He paused. "You built it during your time at Helix, using some of the same logic. I don't think PulseGrid would be thrilled to find out their shiny new platform might be caught up in a legal fight. There it was, not just a threat, but a veiled attempt to poison the well." "You're scared," I said. "I'm protecting my company." "No," I said calmly. "You're scrambling to keep what never belonged to you in the first place." He hung up without another word. And for a moment I believed it was over. I genuinely thought that was his final swing. I couldn't have been more wrong. Elaine called me the following day, just after 4 p.m. I was walking back from coffee with Maya, laughing about a typo in one of our demo decks. The kind of harmless mistake that used to trigger full-blown panic at Helix. "Now, we just fixed it. And moved on." But Elaine's tone was different when I answered. "Got a filing from Helix's new legal team," she said, dry as ever. "You're going to love this." I stopped walking. "What is it?" "An addendum buried in an old tech transfer agreement. Jason's signature, dated 6 months ago, backdated to look like you voluntarily reassigned ownership of the Argus derivatives." I was quiet. "Don't worry," Elaine said. "We already did a forensic analysis. It's fabricated." "He forged my signature?" Elaine sighed. "Not very well. It doesn't match your recorded digital key, and the document metadata shows it was created 3 weeks ago." I exhaled. "Why now?" "Because he's flailing. The licensing contract locked him into a renewal he can't afford long-term. PulseGrid just announced a multi-year agreement with us publicly, and Cyrene's becoming the benchmark for every diagnostics RFP hitting the market." She paused. "He thought he could retroactively rewrite history." And for a moment, I actually felt nothing. Not rage. Not surprise. Not even disappointment. Just confirmation. Elaine continued. "We'll send a formal cease and desist, followed by a civil notice of IP infringement attempt." If he wants to drag this into court, we'll counter with the patent chain, time-stamped prototypes, digital logs, deposition-ready witnesses. Let him, I said. Elaine chuckled. I hoped you'd say that. Honestly, we haven't had a win this clean in years. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, feet tucked under me, legal file open on the coffee table. The fake addendum sat at the top, Jason's awkward signature scanned and poorly aligned. It was pitiful. Even now, even at the end, he still didn't understand that I'd never needed him to authorize what I created. He hadn't written the code. He hadn't designed the system. He hadn't stayed up till 3 a.m., patching loops or rebuilding indexes or writing backend failsafes just in case the launch failed. All he'd ever contributed was his name. And even that was now more liability than asset. I sent Elaine one last message. No settlement. Shut it down. She responded instantly. Consider it closed. The next morning, I opened our internal Cyrene dashboard, a live view of every client contract in real time. 3 new inquiries from companies I used to pitch under Jason's shadow. Now, they were asking for me by name. And Jason, he could try to rewrite the past, but I was already authoring the future. Jason was served at 9:17 a.m. On a Tuesday. Elaine had it arranged through a private courier, discreet, efficient, and just formal enough to land with weight. She didn't send it to his office or at a meeting, but directly to his penthouse, where he wouldn't be surrounded by handlers or spin. There was no confusion in the documents. No ambiguity. Just 3 clean sentences. This is notice of dissolution. The marriage is over. The business is already gone. I didn't hear from him until noon. The text came from the same number I hadn't blocked, though I probably should have. Seriously? Now? I didn't reply. At 2:14 p.m. He sent another. 5 minutes. Somewhere neutral. I said yes. I picked the coffee shop. A small, quiet place tucked between a bookstore and an old tailor on the north end of West Loop. The kind of place we used to go to before meetings, before Helix, before the lies started piling up. I arrived first and chose the booth in the back. Jason came in late. No suit. No swagger. Just him in jeans and a navy hoodie, hair slightly disheveled, looking like he'd aged 5 years since the last time we spoke. He slid into the seat across from me. I let the silence settle. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Why? He blinked. Why what? Why did you use me? Jason exhaled and looked down at his coffee. I didn't mean to, he said finally. At first it wasn't like that. At first, I repeated. When we met, I saw what you'd built. Argus. The potential. And yeah, I thought, if I could help scale it, package it, we'd both win. He paused. His voice dropped. But somewhere along the way, I realized you didn't need me. He said it like a confession. You were better at the code. Smarter about the system. People listened to you more when they realized how much you understood. And he swallowed, I got scared. I didn't move. I thought if I didn't carve out space for myself, if I didn't control it, I'd be left behind. So your solution, I said slowly, was to take what I built and rewrite me out of it? His eyes met mine. I didn't think it would go that far. But it did, I said. You kept going. He didn't argue. You married me, I said, voice steady, knowing you were building something on me, not with me. And for a while I believed in you. I believed in us. I leaned forward slightly. I really loved you, Jason. I wasn't playing a game. I wasn't trying to win. I wanted to build something that lasted forever. With you. Not in spite of you. His eyes were glassy now. He didn't speak. You could have had everything, I continued. The business. The marriage. The success. You could have had me at your side, not in your shadow. I shook my head. But you weren't the man you told me you were. Jason looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe beg. Maybe explain. But I didn't let him. I deserved a partner. Someone who saw me clearly. Who respected what I brought to the table. Not someone who was threatened by it. I sat back, letting it land. He looked down at his hands. I didn't know how to be that man. I know, I said softly. And that's why this ends here. He looked up, pained. Do you hate me? I considered the question. No, I said truthfully. I don't hate you. He looked relieved for a second. But I don't need you. Not as a partner. Not as a co-founder. Not as a husband. He winced but said nothing. Your legacy, I added, won't be what you built. It'll be what you tried to steal. And what you lost. He nodded slowly. I deserved that. I stood, slid my empty mug toward the center of the table, and gathered my coat. "You deserve better too," I said as I stood. "But you'll have to live with the man you chose to be." Jason didn't follow me out. He just sat there, eyes on his coffee, like it could still warm something that had long since gone cold. I walked back into the light of day and didn't look back. They asked me to speak at Impact Tech in June. It was the largest tech leadership summit in the Midwest, the same one Jason and I had attended 3 years earlier, back when he was the keynote and I was listed in the program as technical co-founder invited. Back then, I stood off stage while he talked about scalability and culture and thinking lean. I remembered watching him flash diagrams I'd built and take credit with the kind of ease that only comes from years of practice. This time, my name was on the banner. Everly R. Keene, founder and CEO. Cyrene Systems. No mention of Helix. No mention of Jason. Just me. The day of the keynote, I wore black slacks, a white silk blouse, and no jewelry. No branding. No distraction. Just my voice. The ballroom was full, 600 executives, founders, investors, and engineers. I stepped onto the stage without notes. No slide deck. Just a single screen behind me that read, "Systems that hold." I began. 3 years ago, I helped build a diagnostics platform that scaled to dozens of clients and millions in revenue. But I wasn't the one on stage. I was behind the curtain writing code, solving problems, silently holding the machine together. A few heads nodded. A few sat straighter. I was told I wasn't market-facing, that I lacked executive presence, that my value was internal. More nods. I let them say that because I thought building something that worked would eventually be enough. Pause. But working systems only matter if the people building them are seen. The room got still. I smiled slightly. So I left. I rebuilt. And I started over with a system that doesn't just diagnose performance, it reflects who created it. One that can't be stolen, minimized, or branded by someone else. I told them about Naira, its decision loops, its real-time learning models, its efficiency under pressure. But more than that, I told them what we built at Cyrene. A team built on trust. A product built on clarity. A company built without pretending. I didn't mention Helix once. I didn't have to. Because silence can say everything. When I finished, the applause came slow, not out of hesitation but gravity. People stood, not just for the system, but for the woman who finally stepped into the spotlight with her own name on the code. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I pulled up the live stream replay. Right before I walked on stage, there was a shot of the banner behind me. My name. My title. The camera panned to the audience. Jason was there. 3rd row. Far right. He wasn't on the program, but I saw him. Not clapping. Not glaring. Just sitting there. Watching. I closed the window. That moment wasn't about him. It was about everything I'd done since walking out of that boardroom with my name still intact, and my system still mine. The next morning, Cyrene's inbox was flooded with inquiries. Partnerships. Pilot requests. Investment interest. But all I could think about was one simple truth. The same industry that once questioned whether I belonged, now understood that I built the blueprint. The morning was quiet. Just me, a fresh cup of dark roast, and a playlist I'd labeled Build Mode. The office was still mostly empty. Malik wouldn't roll in until after 9, and Maya was working from home, chasing down 2 late-stage procurement teams for upcoming contracts. I liked these mornings, when no one needed anything from me, when everything important had already been built. I opened my laptop and checked the client portal. No crashes. No lags. Naira was steady, efficient, elegant, like always. A small red dot blinked in the top right corner of my dashboard. New invoice paid in full. Client. Helix Systems Incorporated. License. Enterprise Core Tier Plus AI Expansion. Term. Renewed for 12 months. Rate unchanged. Negotiation none. I stared at it for a moment, then clicked into the full transaction. The routing matched the same corporate account as before. The approval came from interim CEO L. Bernstein, a name I didn't recognize. Jason was gone. Not a press release. Not a LinkedIn update. Just quietly replaced. They hadn't even tried to negotiate the terms. Elaine sent a follow-up email 3 minutes later. Renewal confirmed. No red lines. Looks like they've learned their place. I smiled into my coffee. That line used to feel like a power move. Like I needed to prove something. Now, it just felt clean. I walked to the wall of windows and looked out over the skyline. The same city Jason once convinced me we'd conquer together. But I wasn't standing in his shadow anymore. I was standing in the headquarters of my own company, one that wasn't propped up on borrowed vision, but built from the ground up with clarity, intention, and people who knew what they were doing. The walls weren't covered in buzzwords. They were covered in working systems. My systems. I sat back down and opened a new email. Subject: Intern nomination, Isla Santiago. Mira had referred her to a national Women in Tech program, and they wanted a letter from me as part of the submission packet. I wrote it in 10 minutes. Not because it was easy, but because I knew exactly what Isla needed to hear. When I hit send, I leaned back, folded my arms, and took one last long look at the Cyrene homepage live on my second monitor. No flashy intro. Just our mission in clean text. We build systems that hold. We protect what we create. And we never forget who built it. There was no mention of Jason. No footnote about Helix. No backstory that needed to be retold. Because everything that mattered was already in motion. And the rest was just noise.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.